Alright, so we were checking out the Flywoo Fly Times 85, and this is an inverted 2-inch Cinewhoop. It is based off of the, I guess, previous generation, Fly Lens 85. And you see it just basically has different prop guards, and we're going to talk a lot about that here momentarily. I will link this video down in the video description in case you missed it. The Fly Lens 85 has gone through a few updates that I haven't gotten since the version 1 came out. I think basically some changes were made to the frame. I think the flight controller got updated to version 2, which this one has. It's the same one. But other than that, it's pretty much flies the same. I think the bottom cage was also changed a little bit as well. Just wanted to tell you what the differences are. But they basically took the electronics from the Fly Lens 85 and put them into a updated frame here. This is, you can see you have these arms that go across like this, whereas the Fly Lens 85 doesn't have that. So slight modification. The front part there is the same where the camera mounts. It's got the 3 rubber grommets for vibration dampening. And I did transfer over the Naked 03 light from the Fly Lens 85 over here. So I have basically a direct comparison in terms of the weight. It does come with the same battery tray. It does come with a couple of other ones as well. So the 750 was installed by default. They also get a 550 and a 1000, and those are for the lipos. I'll show you in a second. You also get a spare prop guard. You can see it's just TPU. It's in black, and basically it's just a string here. We'll talk about that here in a second. Those are other things here: spare landing pad, some tools. Get a whole bunch of spare screws in case you lose any, and then you get a few more of these spare wire holders. That's these little parts right here. So these holds the motor wires onto the arms right there. It's kind of not really focusing right there. So they sent me the one, of course, without the 03 air unit. It comes basically, yeah, you can get the frame kit like this, or I guess they call it the non-VTX version. So you have to add your own VTX. But it does come in a version with the 03 air unit Lite, which is basically the Naked 03 air unit. You can also get a version with Walksnail, another version with HD0, and another version with analog. So it does come. Flywoo was like one of the few companies that still does analog and HD0 and all of them. So just basically they do whatever you need. They design their quads around this. So pretty nice that they do that well. A lot of other companies like iFlight, they only do DJI and that's it. So again, yeah, it's the same electronics as before. It's called the Flywoo, let's see here, it's the Goku F405 HD 122S ELRS all-in-one V2, and it has the white PCB. Anyway, so here's all the specs here. It does come with version 3 ELRS firmware, and this is the gyro, and it says it's either the ICM 42688 or the MPU 6000. I think I've got the ICM 42688. I'll put up on the screen here what it is. I don't recall exactly if I checked that or not. And then it has, like, you know, barometer, has black box, only goes up to 2S, and does have a 5 volt and 9 volt BEC. The 9 volt BEC is for the 03 air unit, so pretty nice. 4.9 grams for the weight, and then it does come with the wiring diagram. So if you lost yours or wondering how to wire up your Goku board, you can probably freeze this video and take a look. So I think this is new. On the previous ones I reviewed, this little diagram was only included on the product page, or now they're including it as a piece of paper in the package, which is nice. The motors are the same and the props are the same. So the same 1003 14,800 kV motors. So obviously we're running on 2S here, and the same jump van bi-bladed props. That's the same as well. They did change, of course, the whole prop guard on the outside here. They have these all aluminum, like CNC pieces here, and then this TPU prop guard that goes all the way around. And this is an idea that I showed them and a bunch of other companies a while back in terms of getting better performance out of a Cinewhoop where it doesn't feel as much like a Cinewhoop. And I'll talk about that a little bit later. Basically, all the mass of the prop guard is now kind of removed. It has even less mass on the prop guard than the Flylens 85. And this thing flew fairly well because the mass on the prop guard was greatly reduced compared to other Cinewhoops at the time, and now we're even getting it down further. And just, for those of you that are curious, I did take this off and get the weight of this. I think it's like 1.4 grams or something like that, and the weight of the prop guard, and divide that by 4. Basically, the weight or the mass that's extended beyond the end of the arm is about 1.6 grams per arm. So that's very, very little. So, when people wonder why Cinewhoops don't fly like a regular quad, so if you think about this, here's a 2-inch regular quad versus a 2-inch Cinewhoop, and that has to do with the weight of these extra pieces here that are on the end acting as propeller guards that cause a lot of either air disturbance when you're flying. So this obviously creates drag out here, and it's additional mass which the motors have to fight against that you won't have on a traditional quad that doesn't have prop guards. So for those of you wondering why Cinewhoops fly differently compared to a regular quad, that's the reason why. It's because of that extra mass. And this design, the FlyTimes 85, reduces that mass, I think, about as minimalistic as possible, or that the most they can get off of here, providing basically the minimal amount of protection, prop guard protection, on a Cinewhoop. I don't think you'll see a design that's going to be any lower than this. So in terms of the weight difference between the Flylens 85 and the FlyTimes 85, because of the less mass here in the prop guard, it goes from about 76.89 grams, about 77 grams roughly, and now we're like in the 66 to 67 gram range, somewhere in there. So it is a pretty significant drop in weight. So they changed the prop guard, of course, but they also changed this little bottom cage where the O3 air unit is actually attached to. And so it's probably, you're not going to be able, it's probably hard to see here, but it's a change in the design, and I just kind of pointed out. Basically, in the old design, this cage here, the O3 air unit was attached to this cage, and then the cage was attached to the frame via this little press nut, fit nut right there, and this standoff, and that's a screw that goes into. Basically, it holds the prop guard plus this bottom cage to the main frame. And that was the old design. So they changed it in this new design, and I think obviously it makes it lighter, which as we have less mass now, but I think the durability factor is gone down quite a bit. So they have basically this plastic piece right here. So there's a little bit of protection here for things hitting the side. Obviously this naked O3 area, it's very, I guess, well, since you're flying like this, I guess it's not super exposed, but you are basically landing on the O3 air unit. So the O3 air unit is actually attached to the frame via this screw right here. So there's 4 screws that go through the frame and then through this grommet for the flight controller. And then you have these spacers here. And you see that there's shorter ones over here because the naked O3 air unit has these little pieces here that, for example, this one right here, which is the camera's not cooperating. This one right here is holding the camera coaxial cable in place, and there isn't a corresponding one on this side, so that's why this one's longer. So that screw goes all the way through here, through this first PCB, and into this middle piece right here. That's where that screws into, this little middle piece right here that's kind of covered up by this plastic. And then there's another screw that's right there, that's underneath this foam. That screw goes through this plastic piece, and then it goes into that middle piece right there. So putting this together was pretty tricky. It took me about 30, maybe 40 minutes to line up everything right, making sure all the little antenna wires and motor wires and everything is out of the way. You want to check and triple check and make sure that they're not going to get caught in the props and shake things, and otherwise you're going to have a bad day, because as soon as you take off, if you cut a wire, this is going to crash because something's going to break. This is the way I did it. In the model, the 3D model that they have a render of, this USB port is on the opposite side and the antennas are over here, and I couldn't get the antennas to to fit, or the length of the antenna was too short, so I had to rearrange it like this, which means this USB port is kind of it's right up against this wire here. And they do include a cable. This is a right-angled USB-C cable. This is included, and that's so that you can get access to the USB-C port like this. Otherwise, the motor is blocking a regular cable, so this is the only way you can do that. Or you can use the, I have a micro SD card slot in this one, I think. Yeah, there's the micro USB slot, so micro SD card slot, sorry. So I could put a memory card in there. That would be easier. I guess if you still have a Naked O3 with the SD card still attached, then you can do that instead. All right, so here's how much it weighs without any battery, 69.45 grams. And I mainly flew with the 2S750. So these are, I used all the Flywood batteries because the Flywood batteries are the ones that fit the trays. And then the little tray design is a little bit different the way it slots in. So something to keep in mind, slightly different from the Fly Lens 85, but they have the same trays. So the 750, I roughly get 5 to 5.5 minutes, give or take. Obviously, how you fly and how much aggression you are on the throttle will determine how much flight time you get. So if you're really just cruising around, yeah, you'll get more. If you're going crazy on throttle, you're going to get less. So that's my range, 5 to 5.5 in the 750 2S. Now they're claiming 8+ minutes on the 1000 2S. If you're just kind of cruising around not doing anything, you could probably eke that out on a full charge, and you take the battery pretty low, like close to 3 volts or 3.1 volts. But for my kind of flying, on this battery, I was getting, I don't know, roughly 6.5 to 7 minutes. So I think that's still pretty good for this. And then on the 550, yeah, this is the 552S. It's a bit less. It's like 4.5-ish to 5 minutes, depending. It's probably closer to 4 if you're pretty aggressive. So those are things to keep in mind. But here's the weights here. I'm not going to switch the tray out. It's a kind of a hassle. But with a 550, it's like 95.5. The 750, 104.4. And then with the 1000, it's 115.13. So for me, I think the 750 is the sweet spot. I would just go with that. I think you get the best balance of flight time and performance. If you really are trying to go for more flight time or for more performance, then obviously go with a lighter battery and the smaller battery tray, especially if you're doing more freestyle. But if you're really aggressive on this small battery, you're going to be getting probably closer to 3 to 3.5 minutes in this battery. Maybe even less, depending on how aggressive you are. But at that weight, with the 550 here, under 100 grams, yeah, the performance is pretty insane. It's like a rocket ship on steroids. And if you can only fly things that are under 100 grams, of course, this is the way to go. I think if you go to the 750, it goes a little bit over. Yeah, it's a little bit over 100 grams. So for those of you that are trying to keep it under 100 grams, maybe you can, if you can find a 600, you could get close to the 100 gram limit for those of you guys that are, I think Japan is one of those countries that uses a 100 gram limit. So again, with this design, with very minimal stuff here on the ends, and the prop guards having very little mass and not really, causing a lot of air disturbance, the performance here is as close as you can get to a quad without any prop guards as I think you can possibly get. And it feels like more like a regular quad versus even the Fly Lens 85, in which I thought, wow, that because they took so much mass out of the prop guard area, it really started to feel like a regular quad without any prop guards. And this even takes that to the next level, which is, basically, in my opinion, pretty awesome. But if you still want a little bit of, prop guard there, just in case that's there. The indoor performance, of course, you can't fly it very slow, just like anything. It's just all up to the pilot. And, it's these prop guards are there in case you're flying it inside the house or whatever. They do, as you can see here, go all the way to the edge, so you're not going to be hitting the metal. And then, this side piece here is, because it's TPU, it will bend, and there's a little bit of space here between that and the props. So you could probably hit objects and not worry too much. I would probably not fly this around people very aggressively because there's not that much here to prevent the prop from getting hit by the person or vice versa. Obviously, if they hit in this corner here, it will do its job because the prop is basically out of the way. You would have to hit it at a really deep angle here. This angle is fine, and it's just the front and the sides, I think, where you may have some issues. Obviously, as the prop is spinning here, this probably right in this area here is the most vulnerable. But the concept that I was hoping they would do is to actually, instead of having this sort of stretchy thing, is you could probably make some third-party prop guards and just extend this out further a little bit, and then just kind of forget about this section here. Because I did show them this concept a long time ago. I don't know if I showed this on the channel before. I probably did, but every time I show this, people freak out. So this is pretty old. I've been flying this for at least 3 years. And if you remember this frame, let me know if you know the name in the comments. I'll see if anyone can figure it out. It's at least 4 years old, I think, is 4 or 5 years ago when this came out. And I converted it, of course, and I used these prop guards. As you can see, they are actually being used as landing feet. But this basically is this idea of very minimal prop protection with very little mass here, this little ABS plastic piece. If you guys remember which model this thing came off, I'll be super impressed. This showed up on my channel about 7 or 8 years ago. This was before its time. People did not like this. That was back in the day when Cinewhoops, or this is probably before Cinewhoops, where you had these giant prop guards, hoops or whatever, with just, if you're wondering, this, people think that these things fly like crap, and that's why, because they have all this mass here on the ends. And then back in the day, this was actually from a model that was, not inverted like this, but it was more like this, where the props were like, basically upright. And then they had these really minimal prop guards. I think it was some kind of whoop or something like that. And people were like, oh my God, this is not going to provide any kind of protection. But, this is an idea before its time. I think when I showed this around 3 years ago, all the companies were like, no one's going to buy that. So it's kind of funny that now we have something like this, but I think what they could do is probably, either make an ABS version of this instead of TPU, instead of printing it as one giant piece like this, just like make some smaller pieces here, because the basically this part here, it just screws in and it's held in. So they could make a guard that goes through this part right here and right here, and they just forget about this section right here, because by the time prop is over here, it's kind of out of the way, and if you're hitting something that's coming in this area, it's just gonna, the props is gonna hit it anyway. So that's what I would do to change this design a little bit, because I think this is kind of, I don't know, in my opinion, kind of useless. So I like I said, I've been flying this around for at least a few years now, and this flies like a regular quad in my opinion. You don't really notice the mass of these little prop guards at the end here, and then of course I use it as landing feet as well. And I was kind of hoping that this would have that as well. When I first saw this in renders, I was like, oh, maybe you're landing on some prop guards, but it turns out it's not the case. You're not landing on these. You're landing on the air unit, and obviously you do definitely want to put this foam on here. That's included, an extra piece in case you need it. It does provide some cushioning, but when if you're landing pretty hard, it's going to be putting stress on here, and I have crashed this a few times, and I do notice that these screws do start to loosen up a little bit after some crashes. So I pretty much, after any kind of crash, I check these screws, because they'll loosen up because there's no Loctite there. That I'm using a Loctite, and yeah, that's I don't know, durability of this in a really horrific crash. This air unit is probably toast. That's kind of why they're marketing this towards advanced flyers versus beginners, because I think the durability is going to be an issue for people that crash a lot. I did have a few minor crashes and everything was fine. Just these screws get a little bit loose, so just check those. But yeah, over time, I am concerned about landing on this. It would be nicer to have. Would have been nice to have like a prop guard here where it would extend down and then you actually land on that. You know, so like protection as a prop guard plus as landing feet, like this sort of idea that I had here. Of course, obviously the front here is not protected because these parts were not designed together. So obviously you would want this prop guard to be at it, you know, obviously turned so that there's a wider gap here and a smaller gap here. So, but I'm honestly, you know, if you're worried about breaking something, I would not fly something this anyway. And if you're really worried about like hurting people or objects, you know, probably better to stick with something with more traditional prop guard like this versus this minimalistic prop guard that's on the Fly Times. In the day though, I think it flies really well considering it the size, 2 inches, only 2S. It's freestyle. The main issue is it's got plenty of power, but it doesn't have any mass because it's really light. So it doesn't have any mass to basically initiate those kind of moves where you're carrying your momentum over an object. So you're instead of doing that, you have to maintain your throttle over that object to sort of maintain your speed and not let go. So you can't really fly it like something that's a lot heavier, like a 3.5 inch or a 5 inch. If your goal is to do freestyle, obviously there's better things to get out there versus this. I would just go with like a 3-inch micro without any prop guards if your main goal is freestyle. But if you want to do like indoor shooting, you know, just a little bit of cinewhooping, kind of an all-purpose, maybe a little bit of freestyle. Yeah, this is a nice all-around model. They did a good job. Of course, they did a good job on the pitching and everything. You know, works really well. No complaints. I just question things like the durability, and I don't think this is going to be for everybody, especially for beginner pilots. If you're a beginner, probably would stay away from this because you're going to break things, and then fixing the OC air unit here is going to be kind of a big hassle. And then it's very easy to cut wires because everything's nice and exposed. You got to be very vigilant and make sure you check everything on every flight. You know, and when you crash, especially, you know, what I envision happening is you crash and then you enable turtle mode and then like a wire is loose and then you cut it when you try and take off again. So that is the issue with this one. But for, you know, if your main thing is like, oh, you just want to fly mainly like maybe say indoors, or in small like parks with not a lot of wind, then yeah, it'll fly fine. Of course, you know, anything light like this doesn't do well in wind, but that's kind of goes without saying. That's about it. So pretty nice. I'll link this down in the video description if you guys want to check it out. They did send me some other colors of they have some other prop guards. I just forgot to show you: yellow, red, black, and pink. I'll link all this other stuff down in the video description if you guys want to check it out. That's going to do it for this video. I think I talked enough about this model, and yeah, talk to you guys later.